My parents stole my 14-year-old daughter's college fund money and gave it to her cousin, all $73,000. You're a spoiled brat, my sister told her. Your cousin deserves it more, my mom added. I didn't shout. I surprised them with this. The next day, their lives started to unravel. Friday night, Janet and Robert's dining room was packed with foil trays and cheap blue and gold balloons that said, Carter's future. I'd driven Anna straight from her soccer practice, and she was still in her hoodie, hair damp from the locker room shower. Owen couldn't make it. He was on a late shift, so it was just my 14-year-old and me sliding into the last 2 chairs at the long table like we were late to someone else's party. Sabrina kissed the air near my cheek and never looked at Anna. "There's my college boy," she sang, loud enough to make Carter grin and sit up taller. Anna clapped when everyone clapped, smiling the polite smile she used around my parents, the one that said, "I'm fine. Don't make this weird." Robert passed around sparkling cider like it was champagne, and Janet kept touching Carter's shoulder as if she needed to remind the room who mattered most. I watched Anna mirror the rhythm, clap, sip water, nod, while her eyes kept flicking to the handmade poster on the wall that had Carter's name in glitter. No one had made a poster for Anna, not once. I reached under the table and squeezed her knee. She squeezed back, quick and brave. The night was already telling us our place. Sabrina ran the evening like a stage manager. She positioned Carter at the head of the table, angled the cake so the class of topper faced the best phone camera, and kept calling him the first one in the family to do it right. When Janet asked for a group photo, Sabrina tugged Anna by the elbow and steered her 2 steps back. "Sweetie, stand behind Carter so he's front and center," she said, smiling without warmth. Anna did it, because Anna always did it. Robert snapped his fingers for everyone to look happy. "Big smiles," he ordered. Carter held up his acceptance letter, and the room made the approving sound they always made for him, like he was a miracle and the rest of us were background. Anna's face stayed steady, but her fingers picked at the seam of her sleeve, a nervous habit she thought I didn't notice. Sabrina leaned over to Anna and murmured, "This is what happens when you don't waste your teenage years." Janet laughed like it was cute. I slid my chair closer until my shoulder touched Anna's, a quiet reminder. Sabrina's eyes flicked to me, her smile tightening for a beat. Then she lifted her glass. "To Carter," she announced, and everyone obeyed. After dinner plates were cleared, Janet stood and tapped her spoon against a glass. The room quieted the way it always did when my mother decided she had something to declare. "We've all seen how hard Carter's worked," she began, and Robert nodded beside her. "And college is expensive," Robert added, eyes sliding toward me and away again. Janet smiled at Carter. "So your father and I are stepping in. We're giving you what you need for school." Sabrina pressed her hands to her chest like she'd been handed a trophy. Carter blinked, then grinned, soaking in the applause. Janet continued, "It's important to invest in the child who's ready." That phrasing landed sharp in my ears. Ready, as if my daughter was something unfinished. People clapped, and Robert lifted his glass. "No more struggling," he said. "It's handled." The word handled made me sit straighter. My parents didn't have that kind of spare money, not $70,000 spare money, not unless they'd sold something or taken out a loan. And they hadn't mentioned either. Anna clapped with everyone else, still playing good kid, but her eyes slid to me, searching. I kept my face neutral and clapped too. Inside, an alarm bell started ringing. Their confidence didn't match the math. While everyone crowded around Carter to hug him, I slid my phone from my pocket and stood up like I needed more napkins. Janet's house had that narrow hallway where every family photo stared you down, and I tucked myself into the shadow near the laundry room door. My thumb hovered over the app for Anna's 529 account. The one Owen and I had fed for years in small, boring transfers. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I typed my password anyway. The login spun, asked for a code, and my stomach tightened when the text popped up. New device verification. Of course. I'd replaced my phone recently, so it flagged the login like I was a stranger. When had it last flagged? I pulled up the code, entered it, and forced my breathing to stay even as laughter floated down the hallway. The dashboard took a second to load. I stared at the little circle that always felt like progress. Tuition, dorm, a choice Anna didn't have to beg for. I refreshed once. Then again, from the dining room, Sabrina's voice rang out. "Tell them, Carter! Tell them where you're going!" I didn't answer. I just stared at my screen and waited for the number to load again. The number finally appeared, and for a half-second my brain rejected it like a typo. Balance? $0. Not low. Not down a little. 0. Below it, the history list showed one clean line item. Transfer out. $73,000. Memo. Gift. Dated 3 days ago, timed mid-morning, like it was as ordinary as paying a utility bill. My hand went cold around the phone. I tapped the line, hoping it would expand into an explanation that made sense. It didn't. Just routing numbers and a confirmation code and that smug little word. Gift. In the dining room, people were still clapping. I could hear Janet laughing, could hear Robert saying, "That's our boy." I swallowed hard, not because I wanted to cry, but because my body was trying to do anything except walk back in there and keep my face steady. I slid the phone into my pocket and counted to 3. When I stepped back into the light, Anna looked up fast, like she'd felt my panic through the air. "Mom?" she whispered. I forced a small smile and touched her shoulder. "Bathroom," I said. "Be right back." My parents were still basking. My daughter was still trying to be good, and the account was still empty. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went straight to the kitchen, where Janet was slicing cake, and I caught Robert's sleeve as he reached for more plates. "Both of you," I said, quiet enough that the dining room couldn't hear. I steered them to the corner by the pantry, the one spot without a family photo. I pulled out my phone, opened the transaction, and held it between us. "Did you move Anna's money?" I asked. One sentence, no padding. Janet blinked slowly, then glanced toward the dining room. "Claire." "Not now," she hissed. Robert's jaw flexed. "You're misreading something," he said. I didn't budge. $73,000. Memo says gift. 0 balance. Did you do it? Janet's face hardened into that look she used when I was a teenager, and she'd already decided I was wrong. "We didn't steal anything," she said. "Don't you dare use that word in my house." Robert leaned in. "This is family," he murmured, like it was a threat. "Carter needs help. You and Owen are fine." I stared at them, waiting for the part where they admitted it was a mistake. Instead, Janet smoothed her hair, picked up the cake server, and walked back into the dining room smiling. Robert followed, clapping Carter on the back like nothing happened. The denial wasn't confusion. It was strategy. I went back to my seat and picked up my fork like I'd been gone for nothing more than napkins. Anna studied my face, her eyes narrowing the way they did when she was solving a hard homework problem. Sabrina was already talking about housing deposits and meal plans, soaking up sympathy from aunts and cousins. Janet laughed at the right moments. Robert poured more cider. No one looked guilty. They looked relieved. Under the table, Anna's foot tapped once, then stopped. She leaned close and whispered, "Did I do something?" That question hit harder than the empty balance. I turned toward her, kept my voice low. "No," I said. "You didn't do anything." I didn't have the full plan yet. Not in that moment, but I did have one clear job. Make sure she didn't carry their choices on her shoulders. I wrapped my arm around her chair, a small shield, and kept listening to my family talk about my daughter's future like it was a resource they could reassign. Anna kept her face polite because she'd been trained to. I kept mine calm because I'd been trained to. Then I looked at my parents across the table and felt something click into place. And that's when I started building my surprise. When I was 16, my grandmother handed me a card at my birthday dinner and whispered, "Spend it on yourself." Inside was 2 crisp 20s, the most cash I'd ever been trusted with. I slid it into my jeans pocket and went to help Janet clear plates, feeling weirdly proud. Sabrina was 14 then, all big eyes and practiced innocence. When I came back, my pocket was light. I found her in the hallway, counting the bills with her back against the wall like she owned them. "That's mine," I said, reaching. She tucked the money behind her. "Mom said you'd share," she replied, casual as breathing. Janet heard us and didn't even ask what happened. "Claire," she warned, already annoyed. "Be the bigger one." Robert added, "Your sister needs things too." I stared at them, waiting for someone to point out that stealing wasn't sharing. Sabrina smirked and walked past me, humming. Janet pressed a plate into my hands like the conversation was over. That was the first time I understood the core rule in our house. Sabrina took, and I adjusted. I didn't scream. I didn't throw cake. I just swallowed the lesson and started doing what older daughters learn to do, making my losses quiet so everyone else could stay comfortable. That rule lasted for years, until it met my kid. 4 years later, Sabrina came home crying and announced she was pregnant. She was 18, still borrowing Janet's car, still quitting jobs after 2 weeks. Janet didn't ask about doctors or plans. She stood up, hugged Sabrina, and said, "We'll handle this." Robert nodded, already making lists. Within a week, Janet had turned the spare room into a nursery, and Robert had taken over phone calls with insurance like he was the father. They also started calling me more. "You can help," Janet said, like it was an honor. "You're responsible." The first help was my little used sedan. "Sabrina needs reliable transportation," Robert told me at the kitchen table. "You can carpool. You live closer to work anyway." I protested, softly, because that was how I'd been taught to protest. Janet tilted her head. "Don't be selfish," she said. "A baby changes everything." So I handed over my keys and rode with coworkers for months. The car never came back. When Carter was born, the story became that our family had stepped up together. Sabrina got to be the overwhelmed young mom. My parents got to be heroes. And I learned that in this family, a crisis didn't make Sabrina grow up. It made everyone else rearrange around her. By the time Carter was 5, babysitting wasn't an ask anymore. Sabrina would pull into my driveway on a Saturday morning, Carter half asleep in the back seat, and text, "Dropping him off, be back later." No question mark. I'd open the door in my pajamas and find him clutching a superhero backpack and a juice box. "Aunt Claire!" he'd shout, thrilled, because he didn't know he was part of a pattern. I'd had plans, grocery run, a hair appointment, sometimes just a day to breathe. But Janet would call as soon as Sabrina's car left. "Be nice," she'd say. "Your sister needs a break." Robert's version was, "It builds character." Carter would nap on my couch while I canceled things and cooked lunch and wiped fingerprints off my windows. When Sabrina finally came back, she'd sweep in with fresh nails and a coffee, kiss Carter's head and say, "Thanks, you're the best." Like she'd done me a favor by letting me help. Janet and Robert praised me right in front of her. "Claire's so selfless," Janet would tell relatives. "We couldn't do it without her." The compliment always came with the expectation that I'd keep doing it. I didn't want praise. I wanted the word no to mean something. It never did, until Anna gave me a reason. When I had Anna, I thought the rules might shift. Owen and I were stable, boring in the best way. Mortgage, budgets, pediatrician appointments on the fridge. I imagined Janet showing up with casseroles, Robert fixing the crib, the kind of grandparent energy they poured into Carter. Instead, Janet visited once, held Anna for 5 minutes and said, "You look tired," like it was a critique. Robert asked Owen what he did for work and then changed the subject when Owen answered. Over the years, they skipped Anna's school plays because traffic is awful, but drove 40 minutes to Carter's Little League games with folding chairs and team snacks. At dinners, Janet asked Carter about his grades and called him our future, then turned to Anna and said, "Still liking art?" Like it was something to outgrow. Anna noticed. Kids always do. One night after we left, she said from the back seat, "Did Grandma not like me when I was a baby?" Owen glanced at me, waiting for my lead. I kept my voice even. "Grandma has her own issues," I told her. Inside, I made a quiet note. I couldn't force fairness, but I could limit access. That note sat in the back of my mind for years, until they came for her future. Money was always Sabrina's emergency and my parents' favorite tool. "Family helps family," Janet would say, usually right after Sabrina bounced a rent check or needed just a little for daycare. Robert's version was, "You're married, you're fine." Owen and I weren't fine in the way they meant. We were careful. We skipped vacations, cooked at home, drove our cars until the air conditioning died. Owen picked up overtime when it was offered. I stacked side gigs when I could. Every month we fed Anna's college fund anyway, because she deserved options. When Carter hit senior year, the pressure shifted from guilt to demand. Sabrina started calling it Carter's chance. Janet said, "Anna's only 14. Carter needs it now." I said no. Then suddenly, Janet cried and apologized for playing favorites. Robert offered to contribute to Anna's fund, like they'd had a change of heart. They invited me over to set it up properly, and Janet insisted I use their desktop because it's more secure. I sat at their kitchen table and logged in while she hovered behind my chair, offering coffee and compliments. I thought they were watching the screen. Now I know they were watching my hands. And I didn't realize their desktop browser had saved my credentials and marked the device as trusted, so it wouldn't ask for verification again. Back then, a trusted login was enough to move money without pinging my phone. I never logged out properly because Janet kept hovering and rushing me. That night, I drove home feeling hopeful. Earlier this week, Tuesday morning, they used what they'd taken and emptied it clean. We left the party early, saying Anna wasn't feeling well. Janet barely looked up. In the car, Anna stared out the window with her hands folded in her lap, the way she did when she was trying not to cry. As soon as we got home, I opened my laptop at the counter. Anna hovered in the doorway. "Is it about the money?" she asked. I nodded and patted the stool beside me. "Yes," I said. "But this is not because of anything you did." She climbed up, shoulders hunched, and whispered, "Did I make Grandma mad?" I turned toward her. "No," I said, slow and firm. "Adults made a choice. You didn't cause it, and you don't fix it." Then I took screenshots, zero balance, transfer out, memo gift, date and time, and emailed them to myself. I saved copies in a folder labeled Anna 529 and wrote down what I remembered from the dinner while it was fresh. Owen called on his break, work noise in the background. I told him what happened. He didn't ask if I was overreacting. He said, What do you need? And then, put Anna on. When she took the phone, he kept it simple. Kiddo, none of this is on you. We weren't going to argue with my parents. We were going to build a record. The next morning, I called the non-emergency line and asked where to file a report for an unauthorized transfer. The dispatcher gave me an address and told me to bring documentation. At the station, Officer Leah met me at the front desk with a tablet and a calm voice. Tell me what happened, she said. I slid my screenshots across and answered her questions. Names, relationships, account type, amount, when I discovered it, whether I'd given permission for anyone to move funds. No, I said, when she asked if it was a gift. I did not authorize that. Leah nodded and typed. She didn't promise instant justice. She explained the basics: incident report, case number, then follow up from the appropriate unit. Keep every message, she said. Don't delete anything. If they contact you, document it. When Officer Leah printed the report and circled the incident number, it felt strange how ordinary the paper looked. Still, it was a line in the sand. I stepped outside, texted Owen the number, and drove home with my hands steady on the wheel. Anna was at the kitchen table doing homework like her world hadn't shifted overnight. I kissed the top of her head, then sat down and opened my laptop again. One report filed wasn't the finish. It was the start. The 529 account had a fraud line, and I called it from my car so Anna wouldn't have to hear the details. After the menus, a woman named Dana answered, crisp and professional. Tell me what you're seeing, she said. I read the transfer out loud. $73,000, last Tuesday at 10:17 a.m., memo gift, moved to an account I didn't recognize, and gave her the police incident number. Dana asked if I'd ever shared access. Not intentionally, I said, then added, I logged in once from my parents' computer when they insisted on contributing. Dana didn't react to the family part. She reacted to the access part. Okay, she said. We'll open an investigation and review login history, device information, and IP location. She told me to change passwords, turn on extra verification, and remove trusted devices I didn't control. Preserve screenshots. Don't argue with anyone about this, she added. I asked, what has to happen for the money to come back? Dana kept it plain. If the transfer can be reversed, we attempt a reversal. If it can't, it becomes restitution. Restitution wasn't a feeling. It was an order. I wrote down her case reference number, thanked her, and walked inside to lock down every account tied to our lives. 2 days later, Dana confirmed the transfer had been flagged, and that the receiving side was now under a hold. The memo said, gift. Dana's process said, prove it. 3 days later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Claire? A man asked. This is Detective Marcus with Financial Crimes. His tone was polite, not warm. He wasn't there to comfort me. He was there to map facts. Marcus asked when I last accessed the 529, what devices I used, and whether anyone besides me had physical access to my phone or laptop. Then he asked the question I'd been bracing for. Have you ever logged in from your parents' house? I exhaled through my nose. Yes, I said. Once. They asked to contribute. They had me use their desktop. Marcus paused, then said, Okay. Now, the transfer happened last Tuesday at 10:17 a.m. Where were you? I didn't have to guess. I worked mornings at a medical billing office, and our badge system logged every entry. I was at work, I said. I can send you my time records. He told me what he needed, my screenshots, my written timeline, and proof of my location. Before he hung up, he added one more thing. Don't argue with them or negotiate about the case, he said. If they contact you, keep it. If you need to set a boundary, do it once in writing and then stop. When I ended the call, I didn't feel shaky. I felt organized. For once, the family story wasn't going to win. The timeline was going to win. A week after my report, Marcus called back for a short update. He didn't share everything. He couldn't. And I didn't ask him to. He gave me the one piece that mattered. "They're saying the transfer was authorized," he said. "That it was a gift." His words were careful, like he was reading from a standard line. I held the phone tighter. "So they're lying," I said. Marcus didn't correct my language. "We document," he replied. "Send me your records." 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with Janet's name. She texted, "Stop this. You embarrassed your father. Carter already thinks it's his. Fix it." Robert followed. "You're tearing the family apart over paperwork." Sabrina sent hers. "How dare you punish my son? Anna will be fine. She's spoiled anyway." I stared at the screen and felt something click. None of them were reaching out to apologize or explain. They were coordinating. They needed the gift story to stick, and they needed me quiet to make that happen. I took screenshots of every message, saved them to the same folder, and didn't reply. I wasn't going to argue with people who were drafting their defense in real time. I was going to let the facts do the talking. I pulled my time records from work and printed the badge log that showed me clocked in all morning on the day of the transfer. I emailed it to Marcus with a short note. I was at work at 10:17 a.m. I could not have initiated that move. Then I wrote out the setup at Janet's kitchen table, how my parents apologized, offered to contribute, insisted I use their desktop, and hovered behind me while I logged in. "Access obtained under false pretenses," I wrote, because that's what it was. Anna appeared in the doorway. "They're blaming you?" she asked. "They're trying to," I said. "But we can prove what happened." She stepped closer and stared at the screen. "Why would they do this?" I didn't soften it. "Because they wanted your money," I said. I opened the folder and showed her the screenshots. The $0 balance, the gift memo, the texts telling me to fix it. I pointed at dates and times, the parts that didn't care about anyone's story. Anna swallowed, then nodded once. "Okay," she said, and it sounded like she was choosing to believe in something solid. "So we're not begging." "We're not begging," I confirmed. We were documenting, and their lie was starting to look less like a family dispute and more like what it was, a crime. About 10 days after the dinner, Dana from the brokerage called with an update. "We reviewed the access logs," she said. "The transfer was initiated from a device and IP location that do not match your usual activity." She paused, then added, "The originating IP location aligns with your parents' home area and the internet service tied to their household." An outside system confirmed it. Dana told me what she could. The investigation was moving, records were being preserved, and I needed to keep my evidence tight. "And don't engage them about this," she repeated. Later that day, Marcus called. "Your alibi checks out," he said. "We can show you weren't the actor." He moved straight to the practical question. "Has any of the money been spent?" I thought of the applause and the toast. "Yes," I said. "They announced it like it was already his." Marcus stayed neutral. "Then restitution will be part of this," he said. When I ended the call, the panic was gone. No more negotiating. No more being the bigger one. This wasn't getting solved by talking. It was getting solved by making them return what they took. I walked into the living room and told Anna, "Their story won't hold." She nodded once. I felt my own face go calm in a way I didn't recognize. I was done being movable. 2 days later, on Wednesday evening, they showed up right as I was packing Anna's lunch for the next day. The doorbell rang, hard, like someone leaned on it. Through the peephole, I saw Janet's tight mouth, Robert's flushed face, and Sabrina behind them with her arms crossed. I opened the door an inch, with the chain still on. "What is this?" Robert snapped. "You called the police?" Janet's eyes darted past my shoulder like she expected to see Owen standing there to be persuaded. "You need to fix this," she said. "Now!" Sabrina cut in, voice sharp. "The bank called. There are holds on the account the money landed in. We tried to pay the tuition, and it got stopped. Carter's tuition is due." So that's how they found out. Not through conscience. Through the hold on the receiving account. Not through conscience. Through consequences. I kept my voice even. "I reported an unauthorized transfer from my daughter's account," I said. "That's all." Robert jabbed a finger at the chain. "Open the door. We're family." The word family sounded like ownership. Behind me, I heard Anna's chair scrape. She'd stopped pretending not to listen. Janet lifted her chin. "How could you do this to us?" she demanded, like the theft had been an accident and my report was the real betrayal. I didn't argue through the crack. I just held the line. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to get control back. Janet leaned closer to the gap in the door, lowering her voice like she was being reasonable. "Carter can't go without this," she said. "His aid package isn't enough. He's worked so hard." Robert jumped in with the line I'd heard my whole life. "Family helps family." Sabrina didn't bother with soft. "Anna's 14, she said. "She won't need it for years. It was just sitting there." She said it like my daughter's future was a coat in a closet. I kept my hand on the chain. "It wasn't sitting," I said. "It was saved. For her." Robert scoffed. "Owen makes good money. You'll refill it," he snapped. Behind me, Anna's footsteps came closer, slow but steady. Janet didn't glance inside. She kept talking like Anna wasn't even in the house. "You're being selfish," she insisted. "Carter is ready now. Anna will be fine." Sabrina rolled her eyes. "This is why no one wants to deal with you," she said. Anna stepped into view behind my shoulder, silent. I wanted to shut it down, but I also wanted her to hear them without my translation. They weren't ashamed. They were entitled. And they were saying it out loud. Anna's voice came from behind me, small but clear. "Why did you take mine?" she asked. Sabrina answered first, fast and cruel. "You're a spoiled brat," she told Anna. Janet nodded and added, "Your cousin deserves it more." Anna's hands clenched at her sides, waiting for me to agree. I stepped forward so my body blocked her from the doorway gap. "Stop," I said, flat. Robert tried to lean into the chain, then stepped off the porch to the garage keypad and punched in the old code, the one Janet had insisted the whole family should know. I'd changed it after filing the report. The keypad flashed red and beeped. They all stared at it like it had betrayed them. They'd expected to walk in and keep talking over me. I kept my hand on the door and spoke to my daughter without looking away from them. "Go to your room and put your headphones on," I said. Anna didn't argue. She backed away, eyes glossy but steady. I turned back to my parents and sister. "This conversation is over," I said. "Leave." Janet's mouth opened for another lecture. I slid the door closed before it could land. The lock clicked, clean and final. That sound was my answer. Owen got home an hour later, still in his work boots, and I met him in the kitchen with my laptop open, and the porch camera footage paused on Robert punching the keypad. I gave him the short version. He listened, jaw tight, then nodded once. "You did the right thing," he said. Then he went to Anna's room, knocked, and said, "Hey, kiddo, Want me to make popcorn? It was small, but it was real. When Janet started calling again, I didn't pick up. I opened our family group chat, the one full of photos and guilt, and sent one message. Anna's 529 funds were moved without authorization. I filed a police report and a fraud claim. Do not come to my home again. Return the full $73,000 or restitution will be pursued through the process already started. Then I muted the thread. I locked down the account. New password, 2-factor tied only to my phone, alerts for every login. I removed every trusted device I didn't control. Owen stood beside me while I did it, not rescuing, just present. Then I forwarded the porch camera clip to Marcus. The next morning, Marcus confirmed he'd received the porch camera footage and added it to the file. Dana emailed the fraud case receipt. The system was moving, slow but certain. My family could yell all they wanted from the outside. They couldn't reach in anymore. Silence wasn't avoidance now. It was the boundary. 6 months later, Anna's 529 balance read $73,000 again. Not because my parents grew a conscience, but because restitution was ordered and enforced. Marcus told me the case closed with formal consequences. Charges were filed, records were created, and it was no longer something they could talk their way out of. Dana confirmed the funds were restored and locked under my sole control. Words still filtered through relatives. Janet and Robert had already let part of that money get spent on Carter's first-year costs, so paying it back meant liquidating what they could and taking a loan against their house to cover the rest. Carter didn't get rescued a second time. He took a job and adjusted his plans. And because that gift announcement happened in front of everyone, the truth didn't stay private. Once people understood it was stolen money, invitations dried up. A few family members reached out to me and Anna, quietly, to say they were sorry and they understood. We stayed no contact anyway. Our house got calmer. Anna started talking about schools again like the future belonged to her. My answer to her why was never a speech. It was choosing her every time. So what do you think? Was I right to go to the police, or should I have handled it differently because they're my family? And was it right to cut them off? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more.